Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster with SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and thank you so much for tuning in to watch another one of our conversations at home videos. Before we jump into today's conversation, I want to continue reminding everyone watching that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, as a nonprofit organization, is continuing to raise money for a COVID-19 fund. This fund is working to support actors who are out of work with film and television productions being closed right now, so please check out the details below this video and consider supporting if you're able to in any way. Today we're so fortunate to be joined by the wonderful Sir Patrick Stewart to talk about all things Star Trek PICARD. But before we jump into talking about the show, I wanted to ask you about the Instagram series that you've been doing where you've been reading Shakespeare sonnets every day. I think you're up to something like number 63, so there's only about another 90 or so to go, and just how that has been a really conducive creative outlet for you and a new form of connection right now.
Well, the whole sonnet project was really an accident. One Saturday night, while my wife and I were drinking some wine, about a month ago, into my head floated Sonnet 116, which I've known most of my life, I think, by heart. And I began to speak it out loud, and Sunny asked what it was, and I said, it's a sonnet, Shakespeare sonnet. And she said, I want to hear it all. Go with it, because I'd stopped. So I did, and then she said, no, wait. I want to put this on camera. So she got her phone out, and I did it one more time, and there it was, very nice. And we decided we'd post it. We did, and that's where the shock occurred, because there was such a response to this posting of one single sonnet. Mind you, it is an incredibly beautiful sonnet, one of the most well-known of all the 134 sonnets, I believe, 154, I'm not too sure. And the reaction on social media was extraordinary. So much so that my PR people and Sunny said, you know, there might be something here. Why don't you just start at the beginning and do one a day? And I quoted, and this was a little bit scary to do this, but my mother used to cut me up apples when I was very little, and she would always say, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So I adjusted that somewhat to say a sonnet a day keeps the doctor away. And I was nervous because, you know, we are in the middle of coronavirus, and it's absolutely ghastly, and a lot of people are suffering dreadfully. So I didn't want it to appear that I was taking this too lightly, but of course, many of the sonnets are about very serious stuff. And it's been astonishingly popular. Instead of in the street now having people yell out, hey, Captain, how you doing? I now get, love your sonnets, man, that's great. And it is extraordinary because they're, you know, even if you love Shakespeare, the sonnets are always sort of in the background. They're not like King Lear or As You Like It or something like that. But they have been terrifically popular. It's challenging for me because some of them are very difficult to understand. So I have to do quite a lot of prep. But then about 10 days ago, with the situation developing again beyond coronavirus, into the horrendous video of George being killed, murdered, we felt maybe we should just pause for a while, because it you know, there is so much anger and passion and protest worldwide, but particularly here in North America, that we felt we would just pause. The only thing is that a lot of people thought I was ill, and that's why I wasn't doing the sonnets. Well, I'm not, as you can see. I'm disgustingly healthy, and we're planning to return to the sonnets any day now. We have actually pre-recorded quite a lot of them in rather unusual locations, just to make a difference, you know. So you'll see if you follow.
Can't wait to see, and I love that there's still about 3 months worth, even with one every day. I wanted to ask you about taking the first meeting for Star Trek PICARD, because you've talked in a lot of interviews about how obviously you've been vehemently opposed to revisiting this character, and you've turned down numerous pitches and ideas from people over the years. But the thing that struck me was that you took this meeting in person when you went to go say no, and I was curious if that's something that you often do, or if it was really just the specificity of Alex Kurtzman and the creative team that he was working with on this, that you wanted to do them the courtesy of meeting in person.
Never done that before in my life. I mean, and there is a whole custom about how you pass on an invitation to do a project. And I always try to do it politely and with gratitude, but no, this is not for me. But when I saw the names of the people who were proposing this to me, I was quite overwhelmed. There was a Pulitzer Prize winner, and there was an Academy Award winner for a screenplay. And nevertheless, my feeling remained the same. I said everything there was to say about Jean-Luc. And, 174 episodes and 4 feature films. I felt there was nothing left, and it was time to move on. But when I listened, when I saw who was making this offer, my feelings didn't change, but I thought, out of respect, I should take this meeting and face-to-face explain why I'm passing. Well, it didn't quite turn out like that, because they talked, and these are very smart people. Kirsten Beyer, who is the world's leading authority on everything Star Trek, was also in this meeting. And they caught my attention with what they said. But there was another element to this as well. About 3-4 years ago, myself and Hugh Jackman said goodbye to X-Men with a film called Logan. And this Logan was unlike anything that we had done with X-Men before. These people were not in the same world. They were in a terrible condition. This calm, intellectual, compassionate Professor Charles Xavier was now a crazy guy hurtling around what looked like a deserted oil tank, reciting children's nursery rhymes, a danger to others and a danger to himself as well. So I said to Alex and Michael and the others, look, I don't want to remake Logan, because I thought it was a brilliant script and brilliantly directed. But if we could approach the idea of picking up the thread of Jean-Luc Picard 17, 18 years after we laid it aside, not using the same ideas and the same techniques as Logan, but creating such a different world, and a man living in that world who was not the same person that we had known all those years ago, so intimately. And they took off with that and talked. And so at the end of the meeting, I said, look, would you please put all of this on paper? I'd like to be able to read your ideas. And 2 days later, I got 35 pages. And I read it and asked for another meeting and met with them. And that was it. I was so stimulated by their ideas and by their lack of interest in wanting to recreate Next Generation, but rather to say the world has changed. And indeed, the universe of Star Trek has undergone significant change. And Picard is a man lonely, disappointed, frustrated, angry, and angry with himself for mistakes that he has made, as well as feelings of guilt for the death of his beloved colleague and friend, Commander Data. And so in that sense, I was beginning all over again for the first time. And it was a thrilling thing to approach a character with all of this history and background knowledge. I'd never had that experience before. And yet, asking the questions, if he were ill, if he was sick, if he had some mental problems, what would have happened to him? What kind of person would he have become? So that was irresistible to me. And the first season is now aired, and it's been quite popular. So I feel I did the right thing. Although there were still moments when I was on the set, especially when we were shooting that episode with Marina Sirtis and Jonathan Frakes, which I loved so much, when I really had to pinch myself to come to terms with what it was that I was doing. But I'd made a couple of conditions. One of them was that I would never wear a uniform. And well, we had to sneak me into a uniform because we had some shots of previous history. But they stuck to that. And even though I did say, engage, I think twice in the series, there was not too much referencing what was so typical of Next Generation.
Yeah, it really
Sorry,
was.
that was a long answer to a very simple question.
No, but I love it. There's so much detail in the decision making, and so much that goes into choices like this in your career. And there was something that really struck me that you've said previously about how when you were first playing this character on Star Trek Next Generation, that around the third season you started to feel the lines between yourself and the character really completely diminish in a way that you hadn't experienced before. And I was really interested in how that shifted and changed the way that you work, particularly in terms of how you would prepare for scenes, whether you would still explore as many choices or there was more of just a gut instinct when you're walking onto set. And then in particular, how that then fed into revisiting this character at this point, and if that really still felt like it was the case for you.
A lot of it became pure instinct. As Picard and Patrick, week by week, month by month, season by season, merged more and more. And I became a little freer to explore aspects of him that we had not done before. Gene, who very, very sadly passed away during our third season, surprisingly, unexpectedly, that had a very dark impact on our show. But there were certain aspects of Picard that Gene really wasn't that interested in looking into. The political the present day references about society and warfare and the military and so forth. He wanted to avoid that and not get caught up in that kind of thing. He was telling science fiction narratives. And with Rick Berman, who had been with us from the very beginning and was one of those people who championed my name when Next Generation was being put together, because there were several people, including Gene Roddenberry, who passionately did not want me on the show at all. And there were times when Gene used to come on the set. He would sit in his director's chair, just watching and listening. And I would see him looking at me occasionally. And the look on his face was unmistakably, what the hell is this guy doing in my show? This middle-aged, bald, English Shakespearean. So after the third season, we did expand a little bit some of the themes of Next Generation. But now, with Michael and Alex and Akiva and Kirsten, we're going in so many different directions, which is what I find so exciting. Diversity in what I do in my career, and even in the way that I work, has always been central to me. I like to always be challenged by something, if possible. And there have been aspects of the new show, the new series, that were indeed quite challenging.
What were those specific aspects that you found really challenging in terms of your work as an actor on the show?
Well, being without the crew, although it took me a long time to admit that to myself. I mean, Commander Riker, Commander Data, Counselor Troy, Lieutenant Geordie LaForge, and there was no team like that to become part of, because I'd always argued that Next Generation was an ensemble show. We were all as equally important. And but nevertheless, their presence and their participation and the humor and the boldness with which all of our cast in Next Generation carried out their roles, I was missing a little bit. And I had to invent a different kind of life for him, in which he could not say, "Councillor Troy, could I have a word, please?" and then confess to her all his difficulties and problems, you know. But that doesn't matter. It was the thrill of the adventure of exploring something that I never, ever thought I would explore again.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you about special effects work and the way that you work with them as an actor, because obviously the technology has shifted and changed so much in the time that you've been revisiting this character in different iterations. And has the shift in technology changed the way that you work with special effects in terms of the way that you're filming it and approaching it on set at all?
Surprisingly enough, there has been very much less green screen or blue screen in the new series than there was in the original Next Generation. So much of it now happens entirely without the actors' involvement at all. And it's extraordinary when they sit you down in front of a monitor and show you what has been achieved. And there you are, part of this world. There have been so many technical advances just in filmmaking, but particularly in those films and series like Star Trek, where you have to create elaborate, complex, futuristic scenes, and they have to be convincing, because if our audience don't believe that, they won't believe in anything that we're doing. So I don't feel that we're working as hand in hand, as closely with our special effects technicians as I was 20 years ago. But what can be achieved is extraordinary. Extraordinary.
In terms of the way that you were sitting with the scripts and preparing to play this character, and you were touching on it a little bit before, because it is a character that you know so intricately, but he's in such a different space. What was kind of the way that you sat with this character before you were filming it, and the way that it was really different with that backstory and with that history already in mind?
Well, as I've said, there was this huge accumulation of knowledge and experience of the man, and that was there. It hadn't gone away. I was still living that, but then you turn the dials and the knobs and you introduce other elements to it, and it has to change. Mostly I was doing that spontaneously by creating for myself an emotional attitude, an emotional feeling when I was prepping a scene or a week's work, and making notes on that, and then just letting it happen. But that's something which has become more and more a part of my work as I've got older. It's strange, really. You're supposed to become more set in your ideas as you get older. I've recently started a habit, particularly when I'm doing theater. If I have to make an entrance, I will say out loud, though very quietly, "I don't give a damn." And that somehow sets me free. When I was leaving my acting school, when I was 18, back in 1959, my director of drama, of acting, who ran the school, said to me one day, "Patrick, you will never achieve success by ensuring against failure." And I thought I grasped immediately what he meant by that. Nah, I didn't. I was way too young to understand what that really meant. That I must learn to be braver, more daring, take risks, step into worlds where not everything is laid out, and the ground prepared. And so in the work that I do, whether it's theater or on camera or doing sonnets, I have learned to risk much more than I used to do. When I was much younger, I became very skilled at playing safe. It was not unreal, but it was not as truthful as it might have been. Well, that's now what before it gets too late and it all comes to an end, that's what I'm trying to pursue.
I love it so much.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the marvelous thing is that, for example, the actors I'm working with now, none of whom I knew, except for the old crew who have come on board from time to time. They're much, much younger than me, sometimes astonishingly younger, and in a couple of cases, not deeply experienced. Evan Evagoria, for example, the Australian actor who is working with us and who has just, I've watched him episode by episode, becoming what I couldn't be when I was his age, which is a risk taker, getting braver and braver and braver. So I am surrounded by brilliant young actors who are challenging me and stimulating me, and it makes the days at work fly by, and so much fun. We had fun on Next Generation. We had too much fun on Next Generation, but working with this group of actors has been a great gift to me.
That's so lovely to hear. And one of the scenes in particular that I wanted to ask you about was the scene in the final episode where you're having the very lengthy conversation between PICARD and Data. And you're talking about the meaning of life and what it means to really live and be alive, and the importance of death as part of that process as well. And it's such a beautiful scene, but it really struck me in the way that it is just this very connected dialogue with the two of you just sitting in a singular space. It's really not about the action and motion that's happening between your characters or around you in the way that so much of the rest of the series is. And so I was interested in the way that was a really different scene for the two of you to film because of the more intricate elements of it, and also because it was such a lengthy piece of, I think it was about 6 pages of the script as well.
Yes, it was 6 pages, which is for a purely dialogue scene, very rare in shows like Star Trek. And it was very philosophical in its outlook too, because Data was explaining to me and I was absorbing how his desire to be human could never ever be achieved so long as he was a synthetic, because synthetics don't die. And the whole philosophy of it is because we know we will die that we are certain people while we are alive. I have to tell you that that scene was, for me, one of the most important and moving scenes that I have ever been engaged with. And indeed, here we go. I get emotional as I begin to talk about it. Brent Spiner, whom I love very much, and I have such a history now, going back 25 years, that to be sitting quietly, just the two of us, for most of a day, that scene took to shoot, and talking about these elements which were our characters' lives, but also there were huge overlaps with our own personal lives as well. And when the moment came to leave him, and I stood up we'd both just been sitting down talking, and I walked to the door, and then I'd been asked to turn around, Akiva, who was directing, and say, "Goodbye, Commander." Couldn't do it. We did it again and again, because like now I was so overwhelmed by all of the associations of saying goodbye, Commander Data, goodbye, Brent Spiner, goodbye, Star Trek, all of those things. And as I sit here and look across the room, I'm looking at the chair that I was sitting in when we shot that scene. I asked if I could buy it because that chair took on so much importance. I know you'll think this is sentimental trash, but I can go and sit in that chair and feel, if I'm working on something else, something different, maybe a sonnet, I can go and sit in that chair and I feel what I felt when I was alone on the set with Brent.
Yeah. Also, one of the things that is so beautiful about the way that you play this character is he constantly draws everything back to humanity, the need for people to connect, the need people to really have hope and come together. But he's dealing with it in such a grand scale, in such heightened circumstances, but you really pull it into that core emotional part of him as a character, and that's how you display it. And I was interested in just how you work to consistently do that, and if that's something that's a really conscious choice when you're setting about thinking about how he would respond to certain situations and scenes.
As I partly suggested already, it was an impulse of instinct, and allowing myself to believe if I felt something, it must be right. The feeling must be authentic. And I know with Brent, the work was the same too, which I think is one of the reasons why that scene had such power over us both. And as I was saying, it has become now such a significant part of the work that I do. This being brave and trusting your impulses and instincts. I've watched other wonderful actors throughout my career do exactly that. Well, why couldn't I follow them then? Why couldn't I say, well, I see what he's doing or she's doing. Why can't I join them in that? But there was something that was inhibiting me and holding me back. But I maybe it's actually past now, and I'm now permanently in this new world, which I must say I'm enjoying very, very much.
Also, in terms of this character in the show, there's been such connectivity, and you kind of touched upon this earlier in the way that people always draw parallels to what's going on in society and where we are, politically, personally, as a community, as a society. And even since PICARD came out and looking at where we are now, it resonates at every single step of the way and in such a powerful way. And so I was just interested in the way that has made you think about, over the years, the power and the importance of storytelling and the way that it has this ability to really connect and make a difference, different to perhaps other roles and characters that you've inhabited, just from that thread of doing it over so many years and seeing the continued impact.
Yes, it has, because it has become a part of who I am. You see, I always admired Jean-Luc Picard. I was a fan of the man and how he interacted with other people, how he faced up to his responsibilities, the courage that he had. Why didn't I tune into that earlier? And it was just it was simply a case of releasing what was there. And I could have done that when I was 18, when my drama teacher was giving me that wonderful piece of advice: you will never achieve success by ensuring against failure. And it's, now when I meet young actors, or it happens from time to time, and they'll say, just give me one thing, just tell me one thing that you think will be helpful to me. And I always now say exactly the same thing, which is, you must be fearless. And if you can, and if you have talent and you can put yourself into that place, amazing things are going to happen.
I love it so much. Well, it has been such a joy to watch you revisit this character and discover all these new aspects of him. And I look forward to the fact that we have another season coming that you're already working on. And thank you so much.
It's been a great pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.